An anime begins with our overpowerful protagonist Kosuke standing on top of a massive building, completely surrounded by heavily armed forces, but in a fraction of a second, he uses his godlike powers to completely annihilate squads of soldiers. In the very next moment, he mercilessly lifts massive war tanks into the sky and drops them like toys, crushing everything in his path before effortlessly destroying a swarm of attack helicopters. And once they were all defeated, he slowly walked toward one of the pilots and surrendered, though he firmly stated that he would not remove his school uniform. Hours later, inside one of the city's prisons, a group of inmates gathered excitedly to watch a fight and sent Andy into the arena. And even though the boy tried to resist being forced into combat, he had no choice. So when his opponent rushed at him, Andy delivered a single powerful strike that knocked the man unconscious, astonishing everyone who witnessed it. And one of the leaders approached Andy, reminding him that this was already his 7th victory, and expressing hope that he would continue fighting on his behalf. But Andy only grew irritated because he did not wish to keep fighting. And at that very moment, he noticed a helicopter approaching the prison, which made him curious about who was arriving. And soon, he saw the prison director Kei welcoming Kosuke to the facility known as Expert Prison. Yet Kosuke showed no interest in learning the names of ordinary people, especially those he believed would never be useful to his organization Pandora, which angered one of the officers who attempted to strike him for such disrespect toward his superiors and reminded him that his psychic powers would not function in this prison. But Kosuke calmly replied that they should test him first, and then Andy stepped in, telling the officers there was no need to be so aggressive with him. And in that instant, Kosuke became interested in Andy, approached him, and asked for his name, sensing something unusual in his gaze. And when the officers continued complaining, Kosuke decided to make them back off by lifting one of the helicopters with his power, which terrified the officials enough to activate the system that suppresses abilities to its maximum level, causing Kosuke to lose control and fail to complete what he intended. And soon, both he and Andy were dragged into the punishment chamber. Sometime later, Kosuke spoke to Andy through the wall, asking why he had come to see him earlier, and Andy answered that he simply wanted to meet the new Esper because he hated them, which made Kosuke remark that it was ironic since he had clearly seen Andy use powers as well. And Andy admitted it, but explained that this prison was a living hell for people like them because they could not use their abilities, and the only way to escape was by getting seriously injured, so they would be taken to the hospital. And after hearing this, Kosuke promised that he would help him escape, and Andy replied that if he truly managed to do so, he would even join Kosuke's organization out of gratitude, which Kosuke accepted without hesitation and said he expected him to keep that promise. The next day, Kosuke was already in the dining hall, and when it was his turn to receive food, he noticed someone adding something suspicious into his soup. So he assumed they intended to poison him and instead offered the soup to Andy as thanks for helping him the previous day, which Andy gladly accepted because it meant better food, while Kosuke observed him carefully. And later another fight began and Kosuke overheard inmates mocking Andy, saying that although exam records listed him as an Esper, they had never seen his powers because he was always ridiculed. And at that moment, Andy began to feel strange, his body heavy and weak, unable to move properly. So he was struck repeatedly and lost the duel within seconds, and Kosuke apologized to him, admitting that part of the food must have been poisoned, and now he would fulfill his promise to help him escape. Sometime later, Andy awoke and saw Kosuke standing there, who informed him he was fine because he had just administered an antidote, and Andy then noticed that all the guards were lying unconscious on the floor and asked what had happened. But Kosuke explained that what many called the hospital was actually an operating room where parts of their bodies were removed, and he told Andy he had kept his promise of freedom and now needed to deal with his next objective. And minutes later, Andy followed Kosuke while talking about how strange that place was. And when a soldier suddenly appeared, Andy knocked him out in seconds and disarmed him, which impressed Kosuke because of his skilled movements, leading him to assume Andy knew how to handle weapons. And Andy confirmed that he had once served in the Navy, and shortly after they reached a large hall marked as an experimentation room, and using the weapon they had taken, Kosuke destroyed nearby generators and equipment. And from a central cubicle, a young girl emerged calling him Master, and Kosuke promised he would free her, then used his power to knock out several guards. And Kei entered the hall understanding why Kosuke had allowed himself to be captured, since he had come for that girl. And Kei declared that they would never be separated again because now they would become part of his experiments, which enraged Andy as he realized illegal experimentation was being conducted on Espers. But Kei remained confident because beside him walked a grotesquely transfigured man, one of his greatest results from genetic experiments. And Kei claimed he had created the strongest warrior possible, so when Kosuke attempted to attack, he saw that the man possessed a shield and began fighting in the air. Yet none of Kosuke's attacks were effective, and he had to constantly evade the warrior's immense power, while Kei mocked him, saying he would never surpass his greatest creation because it carried multiple psychic genes that allowed it to predict an opponent's next move. And in that moment, Andy decided to help by grabbing the weapon and searching for the right position, finding it just as Kosuke was slammed against the chamber where the girl had been confined, and Andy fired precisely at the controller of the monster, shouting for Kosuke to take the chance to escape, but the monster attacked him immediately and activated his defense while trying to flee. Astonishingly, comforting Casca because what he witnessed felt strangely familiar, and he reassured the girl that everything would be all right. Yet when he saw the cruel treatment she had endured, his anger surged beyond control, and with a simple motion, he shattered all the glass around them. And when Kay compared that experiment to his own queen who possessed the greatest power, the insult deeply offended him, and he declared that is where the true difference would begin. And in that instant, he decides it is time to release his unlimited power. So with a calm motion, he adjusts a button on his school uniform and something shifts, and his restrained energy begins pouring out like a storm breaking its chains, leaving everyone in that room stunned. As he walks forward without haste, the ground cracking open beneath his steps, while every attack launched at him fades away as if it never existed, and with nothing more than a slight movement of his finger, he slams the monstrous experiment into the wall and bids farewell to the brothers who had been twisted into that form. And then, with a small gesture, the creature detonates violently, forcing Andy to shield himself from the flying debris, while the little girl waves toward Momotaru, standing amid the wreckage, and Casca coldly tells Khan that he will pay for everything he has done, and explosions begin ripping through the facility one after another until, with a final motion, Koski vanishes from the chaos and reappears in a safe location with Andy and the girl, watching from a distance as the entire place collapses into flames, and only then does he return to his normal state by limiting his power again, while Andy struggles to understand what he just witnessed. Minutes later, they reach the sea, where Koski shatters an illusion in front of them, revealing a camouflaged ship hidden beneath the surface, and turning toward the remaining prisoners, he announces that Pandora has granted them freedom, and they are free to leave, and at the same time, he reminds Andy that he must honor his promise to join them, which Andy accepts without hesitation, and Koski contacts Yuguri so they can head back home. Later, some of his companions question whether bringing a man like Andy aboard is truly safe, yet Andy quietly steps away and activates a transmission, introducing himself to his superior as the investigator from US who successfully infiltrated Pandora. Days pass and Andy, now presented as a new recruit, reports what happened while explaining his ability, which essentially nullifies the powers of anyone attempting to use them on him, something they confirm by attacking him, and even Yuguri failing to read his mind, leaving everyone shocked. And Koski explains that due to Andy's nature, being close to them may cause discomfort or pain, yet they must accept him because, like many espers, he never chose to be born that way. So Andy tries to adapt, learning about each member aboard the ship and asking subtle questions to gather information, though he admits to his superior that Pandora does not feel like the criminal organization he expected, and Alan reminds him sharply that he has a mission and must complete it quickly because they need the information he can access. Meanwhile, Maggie confronts Koski, saying she does not trust Andy since they know nothing about him and cannot use psychic abilities to verify his intentions, but Koski proposes bringing him along on the next mission to prove his worth, and the following day they leave the ship on a smaller boat and enter Venice, where Andy stares in awe at the canals before they enter a warehouse filled with goods bearing Pandora's mark, astonishing him because the organization openly distributes incriminating products, including illegal weapons and stolen merchandise, yet Koski orders them to contact the buyers to proceed with the deal, and after leaving the warehouse and walking some distance, Casca signals Maggie, who sprouts carbon-formed wings and returns to the warehouse to eliminate an informant spying on them, discovering more investigators searching nearby. Meanwhile, Koski meets with the group when Momoji disappears alongside Joe, confusing Andy until Koski tells him to follow, and as Andy runs uncertainly, he hears a guiding voice and reaches an alley where dizziness strikes, and his voice falters, realizing Joe caused the disorientation while Maggie and Momoji float above, immobilizing several men without anyone nearby understanding what is happening. And soon Koski arrives asking who they are, and his companions answer they belong to the Maldini family, the same group scheduled for that night's transaction, though something feels wrong. Hours later, Andy watches from a rooftop as Casca converses with Carlos, leader of the family, recalling their plan because Carlos betrayed them, and betrayal among espers means death, and Andy is expected to carry it out as a Pandora member, which unsettles him deeply, yet Joe urges him to steady himself while Maggie eliminates approaching guards, and Koski speaks calmly to Carlos, whom he has known for over 50 years since their time in the army, knowledge Andy had uncovered in records, showing Koski was born in the early 1930s and fought in the First World War. And then Maggie alerts Koski that Carlos formed an alliance with state agencies, angering him for siding with normal humans, and he orders Andy to fire, making Andy tremble as bullets rain toward Koski, and suddenly the room seems filled with copies of Koski, confusing Andy until he hears Koska's voice beside him, saying he still has much to learn. And when Koska tests his ability, he confirms that Andy's stress expands his nullification range dramatically, so he approaches and fastens a specially crafted limiter chain around him, explaining that now he can reappear inside the hall where Carlos stood. There they defeat Carlos, revealing him to be a robot, while the real one was across the street targeting them from afar, planning to kill Koski remotely. Yet Andy's expanded nullification blocked his power entirely, and Koski faces the elderly traitor, reminding him he reached equal rank only because he once died, bearing a bullet scar scar on his forehead and wearing black in memory of those lost. And when Carlos unleashes a psychic wave, Koski stops it effortlessly, removes his limiter, bids farewell to his old friend, and with a massive surge of magical energy obliterates everything before him, destroying his enemy with ease. And afterward, he returns to normal as they depart while Andy stares at the devastation across Venice. The next day, Maggie asks Yugiri to read Andy's mind to uncover his true identity, but the girl refuses because she obeys only Koska's orders. And later, they celebrate aboard the ship for eliminating another enemy, while Andy feels uneasy at their newfound kindness until Koska tells him he is officially accepted as a brother within Pandora, astonishing him as he asks whether they are criminals, and Koski replies that it is something he must discover for himself. Days later, two representatives arrive in a limousine at a grand gathering, surprised by the crowd, and Kouchi explains that all nations with powered organizations were invited, while Shui views it as a means of surveillance and control, since high-level espers have become powerful bargaining weapons, and Kouchi hushes him upon noticing Koski and Pandora members present, so they approach and ask why they are there, and Koski answers that they were invited, though in truth they invited themselves, and admits he simply wanted to observe potential future enemies before leaving. But Shui angrily grabs his collar, demanding his true intention, yet rumors and whispers force him to release Koska, who says they will meet again and waves his hand, causing the lights to go out briefly, and when they return, a message is written on the wall declaring Pandora was here, and amid the chaos, Kichi arrives with the event's security director, introducing himself as part of Japan's extrasensory investigation division and explaining they spotted Pandora members and need to know what else occurred, but the man hesitates to reveal the truth, and everything grows tense at once when a guard rushes in announcing that breaking news is already spreading across television screens, reporting that according to available information, Queen Sophia has been taken by that very organization, which shocks Kouchi as he realizes what was truly being hidden, and he promises they will assist because they have clashed with Pandora before, and he reveals he seized a USB from Koski during their earlier confrontation, insisting they must examine its contents while Koska watches from afar in silence, waiting for them to move. Minutes later, the Queen awakens, confused to find herself somewhere unfamiliar, and Koski gently explains they belong to Pandora, but assures her she is safe and has nothing to fear, adding they brought her this way because Yugiri foresaw her life in danger and asked them to save her, and the Queen slowly understands before proposing an alliance, saying they do not seem like the villains described, and together they could fight for Esper rights so they may live peacefully, yet Kosuke tells his team to return to their duties so the Queen may rest, while elsewhere Shui comments that Pandora predicted an attack on the Queen and took her first, though he still cannot grasp Kosuke's motive and needs more information. Later, Yugiri brings the Queen something to drink, and the Queen asks if they can talk since she feels lonely, so they sit together and speak quietly, while Andy asks Koski if it was truly Yugiri who suggested saving her, and Koski confirms it was her rare request born from a premonition, something unusual for the girl, and just then the Queen enters with Yugiri, saying they discussed going out to show her the country because Yugiri feels confined, astonishing Andy because such openness seems impossible, yet Yugiri assures Koski she will protect the Queen, and Koski decides to adjust his strategy since it is not working well enough. Soon, Shui and Koichi are alerted to chaos spreading through the streets, leaving them stunned as women everywhere resemble the Queen, and security explains they questioned some who know they are not her, yet happily play along. Realizing it is hypnosis cast by Koski, while Joe confirms the plan works and alerts the team to suspicious men in an alley, and within seconds Maggie and Momiji immobilize them, deliberately mentioning the Queen's hideout, so one escapes to spread the information, leading pursuers straight to Koski waiting there, where he captures them and informs Andy, the Queen, and Yugiri are enjoying a normal day while Andy follows because only he remains unaffected by hypnosis, and Koski extracts intelligence from captured kidnappers, learning they are a small anti-Esper group ordered online to eliminate the powerless Queen, so he waits for the other half of his plan involving Yuhi and Kichi, who access the USB and uncover government bills, national budgets, and congressional records, though the security director blocks them from seeing classified data, raising suspicion, especially since his partner is absent. Meanwhile, Andy escorts the Queen and Yugiri, though exhausted, suggesting returning to the hotel, yet Yugiri insists on visiting a special place, leading them to an abandoned orphanage the Queen instantly recognizes as one she once funded, recalling a young Esper girl who disappeared without a trace after she tried kindly approaching her, and Yugiri remembers too, revealing that was why she wanted her saved, and they embrace because the Queen was the first human not to judge her powers, and suddenly Cicely, a security official, arrives recognizing the Queen, followed by Koichi, and guards announcing Cicely orchestrated the attack just as he attempts to kill her, but Andy takes the blow to his shoulder, and Cicely accuses the Queen of misusing funds to help Espers instead of ordinary people, advancing angrily until Yugiri unleashes her power, stunning everyone nearby, and Koski appears beside her calming her before before she loses control, then shatters Cicely's weapon and agents arrest him, and the Queen notices Yugiri's trust in Kosuke before entrusting the girl's safety to him, which he accepts, and tells Koichi they found the culprit so Pandora has no reason to remain, promising they will vanish without judgment. Days later, Kosuke informs Momiji and Maggie they are heading to Japan to visit someone special, puzzling the crew, while Andy reports to Alan he has yet to access the ship's navigation center, but assures he has a plan and will not fail given the investment made in him. And soon, multiple ships and helicopters sweep the port searching for Kosuke, who smiles as Babel Agency arrives, ordering camouflage to distract them, while Andy tries entering the control room only to find multiple doors before Joe and Yugiri intercept him. Explaining the area requires clearance he lacks, and suddenly an explosion rocks the ship as enemy infiltrations are reported and city operatives fall quickly, alarming Momiji while Joe asks Andy to assist. And in the captain's cabin, Kosuke watches sensors being hacked by Kichi, demanding surrender under arrest orders. Yet Kosuke's attention shifts to a girl flying outside and he leaves Maggie with the sensors to greet her as his queen. After a long time, though, Kaoru is irritated and counters his attack with ease, launching into a fierce aerial duel at blinding speed, evenly matched. Meanwhile, Andy reaches a room where a girl moves impossibly fast, prompting Joe to stun her with a shout, though she outruns the waves. So Andy disables his limiter, resists her sonic attacks, pins her down, and questions her high-level ability, but ropes bind him as her partner arrives, while Kosuke continues evading Kaoru's strikes, and the girls realize Andy's immunity to powers as he identifies them as Japan's Special Esper Squad, surprising Kaoru, and Kosuke presses her on their aggression, suspecting Koichi's revenge, and she promises answers if he catches them, while Andy learns they seek the access key to the main panel, and discover it was the same key used to limit his power, and they seize Momotaru who holds it, and Andy suggests they take him hostage, which they accept, and moments later battle erupts in the cabin. Maggie is immobilized, Andy is hurled onto Momiji, knocking her down, a flash grenade blinds them briefly, and the girls insert a chip into the navigation system, fully hacking it and redirecting the ship before escaping with their objective, while Andy frees himself calmly and walks away, and Kosuke notices the altered course as Kaoru declares she achieved her goal of buying time so they cannot escape, and Andy heads for the ship's core seeking information until Kosuke appears asking what he is doing and urging him back to the cabin, and as they discuss their loss of control, Kosuke decides they must remain as decoys while he confronts Kaoru without navigation restored, but just before teleporting, Andy touches him and both transport onto the enemy ship's warehouse, surprising Kosuke though he resolves they must attack, opening a hatch releasing captured comrades to their stations, and just as they prepare a grenade suddenly appears before them. So friends, if you enjoy this anime and want next episodes, so don't forget to like the video and subscribe the channel now.